Hi, welcome to the top-down view of the Huda Beauty Empowered palette. First, I'm going to just show you the palette in all of its glory with all the swatches, and then swatch it against other larger palettes and smaller size 9-pan palettes that Huda Beauty has in her collection. I have 18 Huda Beauty eyeshadow palettes, and I am going to be comparing this with a subset of those palettes which have similar colors. So this is the Huda Beauty Empowered palette in all its glory, to bring you up a little bit. And you can see it's a pretty balanced palette with warm and cool colors. So you've got these golds, these peaches which are warm, and then these grays and cool toned colors. But they're largely brown, I think heavily pigmented as well. And an equal balance of matte and shimmers. So you have around 7 shimmers, 2 liner formulas, 9. So that leaves us with 9 mattes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So basically the palette has 9 mattes, 7 shimmers and 2 liner formulas. You have the shade Courageous. I'm going to swipe the liners at the end. You have the shade Courageous, which is like almost like a black sooty brinjal color. Just swatching it here. It's like an intense eggplant color with all reddish shimmers. So that's Courageous. Then you have Limitless, which is like this super gold color. So that's Limitless. It's like a foiled shadow with lots of body. Then you have Confident, which is like this soft powder matte. It's like a deep brown. I think would go very well with Courageous. So that's Confident. You can see quite a pretty swatch. Then you have Charisma, which is this other gold. And I wonder how this compares. Oh, so this looks like a more chartreusey gold. And now you can see this has more silver and white in it, whereas this is more a yellow gold. Finally, I have Keep Going, which is like this sort of a matte formula. It's like a sienna matte dessert formula. And I think would be a perfect base sort of a color for someone of my skin tone. It's a very pretty peachish brown, I would say more peach than brown. So we're done with the first row. Next on to the second row, which is Big Dreams, which is this neutral, almost cool tone matte. This is how Big Dreams looks. And this is how it compares to Keep Going. So you can see very different color stories. Then you have Manifested, which is more a gel-like formula. It's like a creamy gel-like shimmer. This is how Manifested looks. And it's almost like a putty eyeshadow formula, like a cream gel. This is how I imagine, the Charlotte Tilbury one-pot gel eyeshadows would feel like. Then we have Bold Moves, which looks like a very chunky glitter. And yes, I was right, it looks like a very chunky glitter with hints of green in it. Oh, it's actually more silvery, not green. So that's Bold Moves. Then I have Do It, which is another peachish brownish shimmer. Again, very chunky. You can see it got very dusty in the pan as I tried picking it up. So this is Do It. Again, a creamy formula, very pigmented, but might be slightly difficult and messy to work with. That's Do It. And I have Power right here, which is like a peach matte. This is how Power looks. It's a very light colored matte. Would work better on the crease, would work better for shading and giving that sort of balance. But as I swatch it, look at this. This hand looks so beautiful with all the swatches. Okay, so we swatched till here. So we have this color and then all of these left. So next I have Get It, which is like a light peachish orangish matte. That's how Get It looks. That's how Get It swatches. You can see Get It can work with any of these shades. Then Worthy is a gel liner which I will swatch at the end. So next I have Rebel, which is again like a neutral, almost nudish brown, lighter than Keep Going. Would go well with, I would say, this shimmer called Do It. So this is Rebel. It's like a super light tone brown, almost skin-like against my skin tone. And you have the true cool tone brownish grey here, which is called Winner. It's like an ash brown grey. So that's Winner. It's a really interesting color. I would also venture to say that this could be a rare color. But you can see the spectrum of colors is quite pretty. Then you have Visionary, which is again almost like a duo shimmer. It has bits of dark brown and peach in it. So this is Visionary, but it actually comes off as copper. You can see not much difference between this color and this color. This color actually packs a bit more punch. I would say this is Do It, whereas Visionary is like a bit more subtle, almost suitable for office types. Then I have Best Self, which is, I would say, a mix between these two shades. You've got Best Self, which is again a powdery matte. Very peachish, very nudish. You compare it to all, you know. And then finally you have Legacy, which is like a true coppery warm brown. And that is how, oh, when you swatch it, it actually looks more warm and coppery and peachish rather than brown. I'm just using any old brush and going to be swatching Purpose. This is Purpose, which is like the black liner. You can see fairly pigmented, but I don't think it's very long lasting. Yeah, it's creamy pigmented, but I would think that the ink liner, like a felt tip liner, is more effective. Not as pigmented as, say, you're used to. Then you have Worthy, which is like a dark brown shade. So this is Worthy. And you know, side by side in camera, luckily you can see the difference. But in person, the difference is, I would say, quite slight. But in camera, the difference is very obvious. So these are the two liner shades in this palette, important to note. And that is the beauty of these swatches. You've got the entire Huda Beauty Empowered palette swatched. When I swatch it, I think it's a very, very pretty palette. I love the collection of colors. I think very brown skin friendly. Now, obviously, when I saw this palette, my first thought was, isn't this very similar to the Naughty Nude palette? So here I have the Huda Beauty Naughty Nude palette. And I'm gonna have this side by side for you to see. So you can see some of these peachish tones, these brown tones, these shimmers are very, very similar. Let me try to zoom you in a little bit. I hope that's easier. I would say straight up Juicy looks very similar to Keep Going. It's like a cross between Keep Going and Rebel. You can see this is the shade Juicy. So I'm going to swatch Juicy for you. This is Juicy. I think this was Rebel. Okay. So Juicy is somewhere between Keep Going and Rebel. Right? So this is how Juicy looks. So this is Juicy. So maybe let me swatch Juicy in between. So you've got Juicy between Keep Going and Rebel. but Juicy has a bit more pink in it, as you can see. Then you have Arouse, which looks very similar to Get It. You got Arouse. Or is it Legacy? Let's see. I think Arouse might be similar to Legacy. Yeah, Arouse is just like a more peachish version versus Legacy. So you've got Arouse and you've got Legacy here. Arouse and Legacy. Then you've got Please Me, which could be similar to Big Dreams. No, actually Please Me is more closer to Keep Going. So let's do Please Me. You can see Please Me is just like a slightly deeper version than Keep Going, but on the eyelid they look very, very similar. Surprisingly, that's it. So I thought this would have a lot more similarities with the Naughty Nude palette, but apparently not so much. We have a couple of these shimmers that we can compare to. For example, we have something called Titanic, which I think could be similar to Bold Moves here. So Titanic. You can see Bold Moves has a lot more white in it. Titanic has a lot more pink and copper in it. So that's the difference. Then you have Flower Power. Is that similar to Bold Moves? No, it's a very different cream shimmer. These are more white. You have Please Me. Could that be similar to Manifest It? This is Please Me. Please Me has a bit more pink in it and like a deep brown in it. Okay, so that won't work. Then I also have this Hard, which is like a brown. Could this be similar to Winner? This is Hard. And I think it's also a bit of a hard pan, so it's not swatching very well. But this is like a warmer version, whereas Winner is a cooler version. So there you've got it. Not as many similarities as you would think. Like I thought this could be, wait, let's try this and Confident, yeah? This is Spicy. This is Spicy. And I'm going to try it against Confident. Yeah, so Spicy has a bit more aubergine in it, whereas Confident is like a true deep brown. Interesting. So this is the Naughty Nude compared to the Empowered palette. The Naughty Nude, yes, has browns and peaches, but there's subtle differences. It has a lot more pink tones in it, which I think is interesting. So you do still get different effects between the two palettes. So that's Naughty Nude done. For the sake of comparison, I'm going to compare it to the other large palettes that I have. So I have this Rose Gold Remastered palette, which was one of the first palettes that Huda Beauty came up with, but then it was again remastered. And you can see that the warm tones, the browns, make an appearance, but there is a huge difference in the formula. I don't use this palette at all. This is more for collectors purposes, and I don't think anybody who bought this palette still holds the original. But I think you can see some viable similarities between this and this, especially in the bottom row, like Rose Gold and especially Trust Fund and Do It look very similar. Maybe 24K and Limitless could look similar. Of course, these shades, Henna, Sandalwood, look very similar to some of the peaches and browns here. Obviously, the formula is so different that I don't think these are true comparisons. I'm just comparing it for curiosity's sake because I have this palette in my collection. This palette I bought in the last run of this palette, but I know I've tried it 2-3 times. The formula just doesn't compare to some of her newer formulations. So, and I know this has been discontinued, so I think doesn't make sense for me to compare. But let me know if you do want me to compare. I can try to create another video dedicatedly comparing these two, but as far as I understand, nobody talks about this palette anymore. Nobody seems to have this palette anymore, so I'm not going to talk about it. Then I have the Rose Quartz palette, which I think will have I'd be surprised if we find any similarities, but let's have a look, yeah. Okay, so there are 2-3 which are popping up. Like, what about these? Maybe even these 3. You have gratitude, which could be kind of similar to big dreams. So this is gratitude, and off the back of that you can see it's already pinkish, so it might actually not look similar to anywhere. It's very pink, whereas these are all brownish and peachish, so wouldn't work. Then you have, what is this called? Aura. Aura might be similar to something. This is like a brown. Let's see how Aura compares to Confident. Yeah, Aura is again like a lighter brown with pinkish undertones when you compare it to Confident. So would not work. And this is interesting. This is Precious and Winner. I think it would be interesting to compare the two. Precious is a lot more ashy grey. Winner is more brownish grey with ash undertones. That's the difference. And in fact, Precious has a bit of lilac undertones as well. Yeah, then I don't think anything else is there. This probably has a bit more purple in it. Yeah. It's actually a lot deeper than the others here. So that wouldn't work. And any of the shimmers? Maybe let's try, what is this one? Quartz. Let's try Quartz. Okay, so Quartz versus Manifested. Let's try that. Quartz has a bit more white, light pink, whitish undertone. So whereas Manifested is a lot more brown, so not comparable. As expected, not many comparisons with Rose Quartz. You get completely different vibes. Rose Quartz is off. I have the Mercury Retrograde palette as well. Beautiful palette, but very colorful, very different vibes. So I don't expect us to find anything comparable, but let's just check. Maybe we might find something in the shimmers. So here I have, first thing that catches my eye is Karma, which is like this light pink, light peach. So let's compare that to maybe Rebel. These two could look similar. So this is actually Rebel. Oh, but this again has quite a pinky undertone. Karma. It doesn't show on the pan. It's like a peach on the pan, but when you swatch it, it has a very pinky undertone. So not that. Then what about this one? Which one is this? Supernova. No, it's like a proper pink, so that won't work. What about this one and Bold Moves? This is Gold Glitch, which is again like a cream to powder formula. Yeah, this might look similar to Bold Moves. Yeah, it is. I think Bold Moves has like a greenish tint under it, whereas this one has a more pinkish tint under it, which is very light, very light, but comparable. Anything else? What about this Frazzled? It's a very subtle, very subtle. Is it Manifested? It's actually quite subtle. Could be Manifested, but let's give a clearer swatch. It's a very subtle shimmer, so it doesn't have a very strong swatch. Ooh, this is very similar to Manifested. You can see that's Frazzled with Manifested. Frazzled has a bit more coppery undertones. Manifested is a bit more brown, but you can see. Okay, that's the Mercury Retrograde palette. I don't think there's anything else. This is like a Galaxy is like a proper white. These are all lilacs. It's like a proper silver. So with Mercury Retrograde, more matches than I anticipated. but quite decent. You can still get some of the shimmery vibes from this palette from Mercury retrograde. And those are the comparisons of the 4 palettes. I just compared the Huda Beauty Empowered palette to Mercury retrograde, to Rose Quartz, to Naughty Nude, and the Rose Gold Remastered. I think the biggest comparisons, I think 5 or 6 matches at least we found with Naughty Nude, but we did see it was a lot lesser than I anticipated. I thought this was exactly like Naughty Nudes, but not at all. So this is, now we've compared it to all the big palettes. I also have a ton of the smaller palettes that I think could make sense to compare with, you know. Sorry. So you can see I have like a ton of the 9-pan palettes. So let's quickly get started. So first up, I have the Nude Light palette. Right off the bat, you know, this brown is too coppery. I don't see it anywhere. This might be very similar to Best Self, but you can see Best Self has a bit more peach. This is a bit more neutral, but let's quickly swatch it. These ones don't have names, unfortunately. So this I'm swatching against Best Self. Yeah, you can see Best Self has like a peachish undertone. This just has a cream undertone, and none of the shimmers apply. This is a bit too cream compared to this. What about this one and this one? So let's compare this to Big Dreams. I'm comparing this to Big Dreams, and Big Dreams is this one. Yeah, this has like a pinkish undertone, and somehow this is not swatching very well. You can see the pink undertone versus Big Dreams. So nothing compared to Nude Light. I also have Nude Medium, and this might have some more comparisons. Let's see. Let's compare this to Legacy. This is a lot more orange. Legacy is more brown mixed with orange. You've got Do It here, and I wonder if this to Do It would make sense. Yeah, this looks very similar to Do It, no? Yeah, it's almost identical to Do It. So this shade is similar to Do It. And what about Manifest It? I have this other shade. How does it compare to Manifest It? Very similar, but this one has a bit more brown, orange undertones. So if I take these off, sorry, I'm just like trying to create space on my hand and comparing this to Manifest It. Very similar, just has a bit more peachish brown in it. Could this be similar to Keep Going? Let's see. And this is how this is, and this is Keep Going. No, this has a bit more peachish shimmer. Keep Going is a bit more brown. And I think that's about it, but I think you can see the vibes are very similar, especially this section and this palette. The Nude Medium palette is pretty good. Currently, when I see the comparisons, I think compared to Naughty Nude and Nude Medium, it looks good. Let's finish all the nudes. I also have Nude Rich. And let's see if there are any matches. So I have this shadow, which I think, let's compare it to Confident. So this is Confident. It looks oh wow, that looks like an exact match for Confident. Okay, Then you have Do It. Could this be similar to Do It? Beautiful creamy formula. And this is Do It. This has a bit more red compared to Do It. But vibes are very similar. It's just it has a bit more reddish pink versus Do It. Then let's see, keep going. I have this one. And comparing it to Keep Going. Yeah, it has a bit more pink. That's Keep Going. This is the shade here, a bit more peachish, pinkish. Let's compare it to Courageous now. So I have this shade and this is Courageous. Okay, so Courageous is more like light purple, whereas this one is dark purple. But again, lots of similar shades. So I think if you have the Nude Medium and the Nude Rich, a lot of the shades here are covered. It's just that you will miss the yellow golds, which if you have other palettes in her collection, you can always collect. Then I also have the Wild Python palette, which, you know, I don't think there could be these two similarities. Like this could be similar to Get It. Yeah, this one still has like a hint of fuchsia in it. It's not exactly like Get It, but it's very close. This could be similar to Keep Going. So this, again, this one has peach in it. Keep Going is a more natural neutral brown, but vibes are similar. Then I have this dark brown, which is actually not there anywhere. It's a bit more purpley brown. This is a liner. It's like a true blue dark brown. Then I have this very shiny, almost greenish gold. This is very green. Let's compare it to Bold Moves. Yeah, but you can see the green when they look similar, but you can see the green here, you can see the white here. But very different greens. So not much comparisons with the Wild Python palette. I also have the Wild Jaguar palette. That's why I got confused. Okay, so with the Wild Jaguar palette, let's see, can this look similar to Courageous? I think so. This could be. So this is Courageous. You know, this is really hard panned, unfortunately. Such lovely colors, but swatches pretty. Okay, this is more purple, whereas this is more purple mixed with black or brown. Let's compare this to Winner. You know, so this and this, which is here. Again, this is more ash gray in it, this is more brown in it, but you can see why I would have thought that they are similar. Then could this be similar to Bold Moves or Limitless? Nah, but let's see compared to Bold Moves. Yeah, you can see this has more greenish gold in it, whereas Bold Moves is a bit more silvery white. So no. This brown also, this is too red. So this brown and this brown won't work. But let's try. This is Confident again. Yeah, this has a bit more red in it. This is a little more dark. In fact, this shadow and this liner would be similar. So if you use the shadow as a liner, it would give you this color shade, this shade. What about Power? So there is this shade, and this is supposed to be Power. This has a bit more white in it, that has a bit more brown in it. So not comparable. Not much compared to the Wild Jaguar palette as well. And taking this off, sorry, I know it's a very long video. Finally comparing it to the Khaki palette. I think this could look similar to Do It. Yeah, this is exactly, almost exactly similar to Do It. Wow. So this one and Do It are more or less the same, but Do It is a lot more chunky, by the way. So you've got this here and you've got Do It here. You can see the difference. Do It is more chunky, but swiped, they pretty much look the same. Or like there's a very slight difference. A slight difference that you can work with, I would say. My god, you can see all the shimmer on my hands. So let's compare this to Legacy. Yeah, the quality of this 9 pan, the Haze collection is not that good, I think. Because I can definitely find it hard panning. So Legacy is a lot more orange. This one is brown mixed with orange. These are all more greenish undertones. So I don't think anything would match. Would this match Bold Moves, sorry. But you know, this palette has completely hard pan. Like I'm hardly getting anything to swatch. So this is this. And then I've got Bold Moves here. You can see Bold Moves is a more high voltage version of this palette. It's not swatching well at all. So it might be good for a subtle look, but it's not swatching well. And yeah, so I don't think it makes sense to do much comparison. If the performance was good and if it still performs, so I'll keep it as a likely match only if the performance is good. But for me, I feel the performance doesn't compare to this one at all. I can barely use this. I'm only keeping this in my collection for comparison purposes, for memory's sake. So this is Khaki. Finally, what a mess I've created. Yeah. So finally, I don't know if you remember, this was probably the first set of palettes that Huda Beauty came out with. I still have it for memory's sake. This is Topaz Obsessions, and I think this section is exactly matching this, right? So it's very, very similar, very, very comparable. The thing is, this palette is completely discontinued. But if you have this palette, I really don't think, at least for this half of Empowered, you need to get this palette. So if you have this palette, and if you have the medium palette, and if you have the Naughty Nude palette, you can see that the vibes are more or less there. I would say you really don't need to get the Empowered palette unless you want to get it all in one palette for convenience sake. Also, I used to own a gold palette from Huda. I don't know where it is, but I'm pretty sure if you have that gold palette, then a lot of these shimmers you can find. I think what we haven't been able to match in other palettes are these two bright gold shimmers. Everything else we have a merge version of it somewhere else. I mean, if you have already a big Huda Beauty collection, then I don't think you need to it. I think just off the face of it, it's very obvious the comparison. So I'm not going to get into it, especially because this is a discontinued palette. I think this has been discontinued for many, many years now. It's just one of my favorite palettes. I still dip into it sometimes, even though I probably shouldn't and it's expired. But I think it still performs well, by the way. I keep it for memory's sake. But you know, this entire section, I would say is pretty much this palette, no? If you have a version of these colors in your collection already, you really don't need to get this one. From the quality standpoint, I think the Empowered performs as well as the other large pan palettes. As an observation, I find Huda Beauty's large pan palettes of better quality than the smaller 9 pan palettes. As you can see, this one, a lot of the shadows were hard panned, which was annoying. The big difference in that is because the large ones are formulated in Italy, whereas the smaller ones, last I checked, were formulated in China. And the other advantage for the large pan palette is, of course, you have these two deep liners, which these others don't have. So if you are traveling, when you are traveling, you don't have to carry multiple palettes. You just take one palette and it gives you a variety of tones from warms, browns, shimmers, etc. Some of these shimmers, like I said, are a bit chunky. Like, I think these are beautiful shimmers, but they are very chunky. So you will have fallout whenever you're using this palette. I guess that's about it. This is the Huda Beauty Empowered palette once more. I had a lot of fun comparing this palette to all the others that I have in my collection. I think it's a great exercise, and of course, you can ask me why I didn't do this before I actually bought these palettes. That's a very, very good question. But I think I had a lot of fun, you know, just playing around with this palette, swatching, searching for comparisons, seeing if there was anything there that I liked, that I missed. Already have I have 5 big size palettes now, and like I said, I have 18 Huda Beauty eyeshadow palettes. So if you want me to compare any other eyeshadow palette with any other palette in the collection, let me know. I would love to do that. I always have fun playing with eyeshadow palettes, and I love collecting and talking about makeup. That's all from me for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know your thoughts as always in the comments below. If you like me, like this video, like the vibes of this channel, then I would love it if you would consider subscribing and spreading the word. Thank you so very much. I will see you around. Bye. 너를 보고 싶어 꿈에 다시 와줘